Well, hello and welcome to week 9 of the ZRL WTRL. We're on the fifth and final scratch race of the 10-week series. It's a brutal course out there tonight. I'm Kate Bates and I'm joined by the one and only Anna Russel. Anna, it's a pretty tight race at the top of the table. I think tonight's going to be quite interesting.
I think it is. This is the last chance for these teams. We finish off with a TTT next week, but this is the course, 2 laps, Yorkshire Harrogate UCI course. Got to say, it's my favourite one on Zwift. I love this one. There's going to be fireworks. It's just epic. It's a race of attrition, and everyone's got to put it on the line.
It's so typical of you to say you really like the really nasty courses. This is one of the more difficult courses in the Zwift world. It's 28 kilometres tonight, which is 2 laps of just under 14 kilometres. Each lap has 240 metres of vertical climbing. There is literally not a flat metre in this entire course. Before we head down to the riders, and we've also got a bit of gossip to talk about, but first let's take a look at the overall tables and just get a bit of a feeling of what's happening out there tonight and who's got what on the line. All right, we'll start with the team league standings. We're here with APAC tonight. For the women, AHDRL Ace of Cakes on 154 points. That's only 2 points ahead of the Aero Flyers, so certainly this race is a hot race between those pair for the win. Zed Sun in third on 143 points, are fighting pretty tight for that third podium spot with the BRT Devil Kittens. The AHDRL Bombshells on 118, the Fluffy Buns on 113. In seventh, we have the BRT Hellfire Kittens. They're on 90 points, and Cryogen Valletta on 8th on 67 points. So a couple of battles amongst them. The C women, Anna?
TBR Smile on 153, 1 point ahead of the AHDRL We Ate the Cakes, who are only 1 point ahead of BRT Fiery Kitten. So it is all on the line to get those podium spots and who's going to take out the C category. AHDRL Caffeines a bit further back in fourth, the Comets in fifth, the Spin Mafia in sixth, the Cruzettes in 7th, and then we have Evo Flux 8th, CMA Queen Bees in 9th, and Herd of Echidnas. I can say that word pretty well now. We're up to the last week, but in number 10th.
That's a bit of Aussie rubbing off on you there, Anna. All right, let's take a look at the APAC Amen. So on paper, it looks like a very tight battle here between Team ZWC Attack on 156 points and Relentless on 152, but that may be a little bit deceiving. We'll talk about that in a minute. DPAC sitting in third on 145 points, so still quite tight amongst that top three. Back on 117 points tied are the Aeromasters and Evo Savages. In sixth, we've got Wes number 2 on 114 points. Team ZWC Blast on 108, so it'd be interesting to see if they work or can help their teammates up on Team ZWC Attack. That could be a bit of an interesting dynamic out there. In 8th, the WTRL Pioneers on 90 points, TBR 54 Tooth on 77, and Smoother Z Sun on 76 points in 10th.
And looking now at the next tier down, TBR 50 Tooth 154, with Aero Force 3 points back on 151. The Evo Barbarians 138, so a bit split up at the top there. Cryogen Etnas at 123, Dirty Sprockets at 112, Vision APAC 110, 1 point ahead of the AHDR Blowfies, Z Sundries 95, ZHQ Ravens on 87, and the Velo Club Melo Sabla, presented by Cycling Tips, 84.
All right, let's take a look at the C div here. We've got AHDR Chances on 154 points, 4 points back. The Big Ring 46 Tooth, so that's quite a battle still there. TT1 Carbos in third on 138 points. AHDR Choppers 131 points. Cryogen LT'd on 127 tied there with MRRC in 6, so a bit of a battle in the middle of the table there. Cryogen Alto de Latras on 105 points. Also pretty close there on 102 is the Big Ring 47 Tooth. The AHDR Chargers on 93 points. And rounding out the top 10, Cryogen Mount Hotham on 74 points. So, Anna, let's go straight down to the women's racing. They're out on course now. 1.7 K in. It's a 28K course today. They do 2 laps around this Harrogate circuit. There's quite a lot going on because beside the complete lack of flat road, they're actually going up 5% at the moment. It's a bit deceiving to look at, isn't it? There's also 5 opportunities to get power-ups out there and 4 opportunities to get intermediate sprint points. So I think there'll be a few different strategies at play here, and the win is certainly still up for grabs.
Yeah, I mean, last week there was a big upset with the Aeroflies taking out first place in the team time trial and AHDRL Ace of Cakes coming fourth. So they lost a lot of points. And that means now that Aero is only 2 points behind AHDRL. So if you're watching the screen, Aero is the sort of Australian kit, the green and gold, and the AHDRL team's usually in sort of that purple colour. So there's going to be quite a battle on between those two teams. Zed Sun a bit further back, but they just might want to mix things up and, you know, coming into the last scratch race of the season. They just want to have a good one out there. You can see that with Zed Sun out the front. I'm a little bit surprised by the number of Tron bikes out tonight. I wasn't sure, I've done my little sort of bike homework. I wasn't sure the Tron was the fastest selection, but it looks as though that's what most people are running. So obviously, there we go. I always sort of would have thought a specialized VNG works maybe with the Zip 454s.
Well, that's a really interesting conversation because I think from my research, Anna, the Tron bikes are quicker up the hill, the Venge are quicker down the hill, but overall they equal a fairly overall they're fairly similar in speed, and so really that kind of goes to where the riders believe the race might be won or lost. If they're choosing the Tron bike, it says to me that they're a bit more intimidated and see a few more opportunities on the climbs versus the descents afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great graphic. You can see there at the bottom of the screen. This is a very, very bumpy course. And where we're sort of seeing them now, there's not much flat. There's either false flat, so you're sort of up around 1, 2, 3%, some downhills, and then, the big KOM, but also the climb just before that. So just before that red band, this is actually an interesting one because you can have a little sort of counter 1, 2 over that one, bomb the descent and the super tuck, and then take that momentum into the QOM. You can get a really good gap. So I'll be interested to see whether any of the teams do that. Another interesting part of the course I do want to mention is coming up soon, I think, for these riders, I'll have a very, very steep downhill. We're sort of talking maybe around negative 14%. You can get in the super tuck for that, but if you don't get out soon enough, there's a hill straight off the descent, and you can basically get spat out the back really, really easily. So course knowledge on this course is vitally important.
And it is one of the courses that's fairly accessible, so there's really no excuse if they haven't done their recon. The course isn't too different in character, although the worlds look very different, to the Everything Bagel in New York City. So I think there might be a little bit of trepidation to set the pace too early because they know what's to come and they know just how difficult it is. Something else I noticed, Anna, it's a bit of a smaller field this weekend. Maybe heading towards Christmas, some of the riders who have been at the back end have maybe hit their community limit for this 10 racing series. I don't know, but it is a smaller bunch than normal, and that certainly plays into the tactics. But it doesn't change that the Ace of Cakes and the Aero Flyers, they have a real race on. So regardless of who else is out there, they really need to watch each other.
I do know that my Northern Hemisphere friends have found getting back on the bike after Thanksgiving pretty hard, feeling a little bit worse for wear and a bit heavier. So maybe that's been the reason a few of the riders haven't come in. They've just, like you said, had a pretty fun holiday period, had a few of the bevies, and found it a little tricky to get back into that race pace effort.
Well, and today's a pretty brutal course. You want to be feeling good to come out here. Now, you mentioned there was a bit of a surprise with the Aero stepping up in the team's time trial last week. And look, we can see the Aero tuck happening here. So there is a good advantage happening for Jen Reid doing that Aero tuck, but they do, as you mentioned, need to be really careful about when they come out of that. Now, what we did see was a few new and younger riders, and I absolutely applaud the fact that the Ace of Cakes had a couple of younger riders involved. Why that was, we're not exactly sure. And if any of the Ace of Cakers are out there, please send us a note and let us know what is behind the team changer. But it's made the competition a little bit tighter, so it's actually quite exciting for us. So, can we say thank you to them for making this so exciting toward the final couple of weeks, maybe? And Lucy McMaster,
Yeah,
she's the young rider that came in, and she's did a great job last week.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, letting those younger riders come in, cut their teeth a bit. I mean, from memory, she was a C or even a B rider who was riding up with the A's in a team time trial of the winning team in this community league in APAC. I mean, that's some pressure and amazing to see her out there. And I can see a couple of comments coming through the Facebook feed. Patrick Ware calling us the best commentary team.
Oh, thanks, mate. We'll take that on board.
Um, and he actually said what we were talking about before with the bikes, that yes, the Venge and the Tron tend to cancel each other out with the ups and downs. And maybe to look out for today, riders sacrificing themselves for points for the team, which I do think we might see, because we do have points 5 deep in tonight's race. And so you'll have a look at the QOM, which you can see on the graphic in the top right. They're on this sort of climb before the climb that I did mention. And this is where you can see Ebert here from Z Sun just pushing the pace off the front, having a bit of a lead out, going up to around, not too crazy, just around 190, 200 watts, but definitely pushing things up this one. And then they'll go into a descent where, again, super tuck through and get the momentum. Now, the next climb, the QOM, it's quite a good one. It takes about 2.5 to 3 minutes usually for the women, and you've got a little flat portion through a roundabout halfway up. You can tell I've ridden this course a lot of times, but you kick up initially quite hard, then you flatten off, and you can actually gain your breath a little bit, and then final kick to the top, and then you've got a descent and very quickly a little uphill sprint after that for points as well.
The course is really tough. Anna, you will be out on course tomorrow. You race as well. And I think it's kind of maybe a positive to do the commentary the night before and see how it plays out and get a bit of a refresher watching others out there rather than just watching it. But my impression of the course is that if you go too hard too early, it's a very long way to have a solo or a single breakaway. I say that, and then I almost hear in my head a flashback of what happened when the Worlds were run here in 2019. And in the top 10 of the men, it was only the two winners, the winner and second, Mads Pedersen and Matteo Trentin, that came in together, and then the rest of the top 10 dribbled in one by one. And in the women's race, where Annemiek van Vleuten won, there was more than 5 minutes between first and sixth place. So they were absolutely shattered to pieces. But in saying that, it was longer than the 28 kilometres that these athletes are riding. And so I think when we bring that example of just how tough the course is back to these athletes, any of them that may have a memory of watching that race, they might be a bit intimidated, and they might really change their strategy with that in mind, thinking that it's probably better to be conservative than to go out too hard and blow up a mushroom cloud.
Exactly. I do remember from that Worlds race in real life, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember watching Chloe Dygert, and she was leading a chase, and I think she might have broken away from the chase a little bit to try and catch up to Annemiek van Vleuten, and she ended up bonking sort of when they came around the circuit here. So that just shows the attrition that this course has with the constant ups and downs. As we watch D Shaw here, leading up for Z Sun, so even Z Sun, though Z Sun is sort of well behind Aero and AHDRL in third place, they're here to play some games. They're pushing it up. We've seen Dee Shaw all the way through this whole league, and she has always been aggressive. I think I've given her the aggressive rider at least twice, and we can see her pushing up now. A few feathers being dropped. I see, interestingly enough, a lot of Z Sun and a few Aero and very few AHDR. So the leading team here, you just never know what's going to happen, but I actually feel like there's almost none of them up there.
It's kind of an interesting dynamic. Danette Shaw, you're right. She's been one of the most aggressive. I'll throw Ange McRae from BRT out there as another one. I think what's most interesting about those two riders in particular is that neither of their teams are really in contention to win at this stage it would take some almost a disqualification, I think, of the top two teams for them to take that top spot out. And so they're kind of cats amongst the pigeon. Like they really have nothing to lose. And that changes the way that the other teams actually have to respond and react to that. In theory, they can let Danette Shaw go win the race and it won't affect their overall. But we know what it's like being out there and you get the smell of it and it's all a completely different thing when you know that you can get a victory. Hans Joosten going for these points here. She is dropping that power up, and that means that when she goes through this banner here, she'll actually collect a new one. So it is wise to use that. Kim Garland, she will take second and get the points there too. So the top five get points 5, 3, 2, and 1 for those top five riders. I left out 4, 5, 4. 3, 2, and 1. So Hans Joosten took the points there. Kim Garland in second. Danette Shaw in third. Jen Reid in fourth. And Meredith Clark came across in fifth. The Aero Flyers, they look to certainly be on their game today with Garland and Reid. So we need to look out for the Ace of Cakes. Where are they?
I think, I actually had a talk with the team manager, Busy, from Team Aero, and she gave me a bit of background on a lot of their riders. And with Kim Garland, she's a physiotherapist. She's been competing in triathlon since 2014, but had never raced cycling in real life. She's done two 70.3, so half Ironman triathlons, and she's represented, hear this, Australia 3 times at the European Handball World Championships.
Oh, that's unreal. What a
so I don't know,
sport crossover.
I know. I don't know how much that crosses over to cycling, but amazing, represented her country at handball 3 times. And she's also got 2 young kids. So awesome to see her out there. Jen Reid as well. She's a physio as well as Kim Garland. I think they've all gone out for a meet up in Melbourne, actually, in real life only a couple of weeks ago. She's also competed in triathlon, went to the World Champs in 2016, has just turned her attention to cycling and loves racing crits. So good to see her up with this main pack, even though it's more of a hilly course, not really a crit course today. But I'm not sure if anyone from AHDR is watching tonight, but I'd like to know a little bit about where their team is going, because I can see Willox there, and she's represented the team very well, the mum of 3, also from Melbourne. But that's sort of all I'm currently seeing from AHDR. So they could very, very easily, and I'd say definitely, lose their top spot.
Yeah, we saw that last week where we saw Lucy McMaster, the junior rider, step up and race for them. And we questioned that last week too. We wondered what that was about. I was really impressed with how both McMaster stepped up and how the team cradled her and protected her to get through that team time trial altogether, because they did need those 4 riders to finish. But I am curious as to what the change in team indicates. Of course, as you mentioned earlier with Thanksgiving, it is an interesting time of year and often a very busy time of year. So we need to remember that a lot of our community league riders, their mums, their full-time workers, their wives and partners, they have an awful lot going on. So it is pretty high pressure for a lot of them. For the most part, I think they handle it exceptionally well to be out here week in and week out. Danette Shaw on the front again. She's looking really strong.
So that was the sprint stage, for those 5 points across the line. Looks like Danette Shaw took that out with another Z Sun rider coming in second. They've got a fan watching live from Grace Smith from Northern Ireland, so she's supporting the Z Sun team out there tonight. But that was a fairly easy sprint, it looked like. One rider went off the front, but the rest sort of finished in a little bunch with a little kick. I wasn't sure who came second or third, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But, I mean, this looks like the Z Sun show tonight, which is not at all what I expected. I expected more of a AHDR versus Aero competition.
I agree. Isn't that interesting, the dynamic that's playing out? But good on Z Sun for stepping up in quite a coordinated approach. Danette Shaw has been shining bright. This is her going through with a very clear and easy victory in that intermediate sprint. Hans Joosten, did she just get pipped there? It looks like Jen Reid might have just, or vice versa actually, that Hans Joosten might have just gotten over the top of Jen Reid. but we'll wait to see the intermediate sprints. I always like to remind the riders that you only need to win an intermediate sprint by a centimetre, and you should save as much energy as is possible, especially on a tough course. Let's just take a quick look at those bonus points so far. Iris Hans-Josten on 9 points, Danette Shaw on 8, and they are both Z-Sun riders. They're really stepping up today. Jen Reed and Kim Garland, the Aero Flyers, on 5 and 4 respectively. Kate Ebert, another Z-Sun rider. Meredith Clark, another Aero Flyers. These two teams are really dominating. And Lam Kong from the AHTRL Bombshells has picked up a point as well. So it is quite a reduced front bunch already, and a lot of the usual names that we've seen in the earlier weeks aren't there.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of a funny wee old race tonight. I thought the women's field would look quite different how it's looking, but I am really, really impressed, I've got to say, with Z Sun and how even though they are in a third spot, they are putting their all out there. I'm almost thinking they've got the goal tonight, and maybe, someone watching can let us know if this is the case. I think they're going for every single sprint point, and the QOM, which they've taken out thus far, as you can see in those bonus points listed there on the left-hand side of the screen. They are really dominating in these intermediary points, and they're coming around now. They've got that false flat drag that we saw them starting off with at the start of tonight's racing, and they're just coming around to finish off lap 1. And this is a very, very small sort of select few group. I mean, I'm sort of looking there thinking looks like around 9 or 10. Who here do you think's got their chops to take it over these next few climbs and sprint that really hard uphill drag to the finish line?
Well, I mean, I think if we go off form from earlier, it would be between Danette Shaw and Meredith Clark, and Kim Garland would be the other one. Well, what's interesting, Ange McRae's 14 seconds back. She's kind of stuck in the middle. We'll see if we can get some shots of the chasing group, because just behind that we've got Kim Willocks from the Ace of Cakes. But interestingly enough, we've got Carberry from Z-Sun and Schleisinger from Z-Sun. I cannot imagine they're working particularly well together. So while Ange McRae could be a real danger if she can come back, and they're now 10 seconds back, McRae and Willocks could certainly cause a little bit of trouble if they get back. But Z-Sun, they're in control today, and they're not going to be helping that chase effort. We can see they're the riders with the orange shorts on, and they don't appear to be doing too many turns. If anything, they're just tapping through, but not increasing the pace. So it's a little bit strategic. We're seeing a few cat and mouse games go on out there.
Yeah, this is what makes it really interesting, especially you see with the women's racing in Zwift, is that because the bunches are a lot smaller, they don't have that sort of big group dynamic, group speed effect as much as we see sometimes in the men's racing. So it does end up becoming really, really tactical, and you can drop people and be dropped a lot easier. Now, this is part of the course that is quite good to look at, because this is similar to how the race will end up finishing. That's actually going to be the finish line on the next lap. And as you can see, they're on that drag sort of 2 to 3% all the way to the just about 50 meters before the finish line where it flattens off. So what I'm probably looking for the most in this next lap is how the finish is going to play out, because if you've got a group that's sort of around this size, do you do a long range attack, which I have seen work from about a K out, or do you wait until that little climb, have a feather, drop that, or even drop the aero in that last sort of 50 meters and just get a little kick towards the end of the line? And I think whoever has raced the most on this course will know which one that they're going to do. And I think I would like to see the 1K freak solo effort to the finish. I think they're just so exciting. But potentially
You're a masochist. You just want to see them suffer.
I am. I know, I do. And I do think, though, that potentially with this crew that we're seeing here, I mean, Danette Shaw, she's got to be my favourite. We've seen her time and time again put in so many good sprints at the end, and I think we're going to see her take it all the way to the line, and she has been great on the climbs as well, so I don't see her being dropped.
Well, she far and above has the highest 15-second power of this group. And so I think if she can get to the finish in good shape, if she happens to also have that feather power up, something I think that doesn't get considered enough in terms of power up usage is a lot of people look at the feather and they think of climbing and what's per kg. And I mean, don't we all just want to lose a few kg every time we hit the bottom of a climb? But the difference that it can make in acceleration in a sprint is something that can really be a game changer. The biggest IRL example of this I've ever seen is Anna Meares versus Vicky Pendleton. So Anna Meares had a lot more overall high power peaking, but she was a heavier athlete. And so Vicky Pendleton would often get the jump on her. And we're talking about the velodrome at the Olympics for the sprint here, and they were absolute, arch nemesis. They got on very well off the track, but on the track, it was quite a show to behold. And a lot of the time, it came down to simple strategy. So it's effectively employing that. It's making yourself lighter in order to accelerate, not in order to lower the overall power needed for a long slog up a climb, but it's actually in combination with when you jump. Something that we have to mention though, Anna, is using a power up, unless you have somebody who's hitting the buttons for you, you actually have to control that yourself. You can't talk to the screen and say power up. You have to use your hand to do it. So there's a bit of balance that comes in with that too. I feel like, an ill time, take your hand off the bars to reach for the screen to do a power up and somebody attacks, that can kind of bring you undone too.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I know that most of the ladies in the Prem League, and probably the guys as well, actually have usually a significant other or loved one pushing that button for them. And I can hear it on our Discord where someone's just screaming out, go, push it, push it, push it. And their lovely partner is there pushing the button on their companion app. So there is, at the elite end of the racing, there is a dedicated button pusher there, but for the community league racing, you're right. You sort of, when do you start your sprint? Do you push the power up and then go for it, or do you kind of go for it and then know that you've got to pull back a little to take your hands off the handlebars and push that button? So, that comes down to a fine art as well. It takes a bit of dexterity, and if you sweat as much as I do, that phone is very, very useless in its touch screen capabilities at the end of a race. I can barely get any traction on that screen at all. So
if you're not sweating that much, you're kind of not doing it properly. I don't care what kind of industrial fan you have going. I think one of the biggest things about Zwift is just what a sweatbox it is, kind of no matter what environment you're in. So you're right. Now we're looking at the C div here. TBR Smile on there on the top of the table, but it's only 1 point to the AHDRL. We ate the cake, and only another one back to the BRT Fiery Kittens. This is a very, very competitive league, and they do have sort of equal representation here. It is a small group though. TBR Smile on, I've had a bit of experience in community rides with these ladies, and they're really smart operators. They really know how to race and how to make the most out of what they've got. And I've got to say, I've been very impressed to watch them kind of develop through this community league. I think a lot of the time we're talking about the A's, we're talking about who might progress to the Premier League, but it's equally as impressive an effort for these other divisions who might be looking to move up a division for the next season. And I also think, Anna, that it's a really good way for them to learn the game, learn the strategy of racing, kind of cut their teeth and learn it all while their fitness and strength is progressing. I mean, if you could choose, Anna, between turning up with physically ready to go, being thrown into A grade and learning how to race versus progressing through while you already had kind of mastered the gaming side of the platform, which angle would you prefer to come at?
I think I'd almost most want to progress through and get to know the gaming. Like you've said, it's I know it can be frustrating if you're a great cyclist in real life and then you jump on in the ACAD and you get dropped, pretty much at the flag. I actually heard Mathieu van der Poel getting interviewed, and he said the first Zwift race he did, he just got dropped in the first 2 seconds because he didn't realise that you had to start pedaling before the the timer time down. And it's just little things like that, that you realize, oh, there's actually a bit of gamification here and there's a few things you need to know. So we are watching Isdale here from TBR Smile On. And I just, I always like calling out the kit setups that people have on, and those circle sunglasses. I can't say I'm a huge fan of what she had on there, but I do, here we go in for the close up. Because
we
can't
are we
actually
playing
see the
fashion police
arms.
tonight, Anna?
We are. There's no arms on the side of the glasses. So I wonder, are they those kind of like ones that those like mad scientists wear, when they're in the lab or something?
Oh
And it
yeah.
just
I was a bit
it always kind
confused
of
there.
looks
I
like
thought,
that
what
to
are you
me.
watching? I can see your arms. But the sunnies, I gotcha. Yes.
Yeah.
They are a little bit cool. I actually love how much effort everybody puts in. We had a lady on one of our community rides this morning say she'd gone into the garage and tried to find kit and socks that kind of replicated a Christmassy feel. And she said she thought she was on a good thing, but actually in game it looked like a bit of a fail. I love that she even did
Oh
that. I thought
no.
that was quite fun.
Oh, that's awesome. We had a bet going with another team on the league. So whenever our team had the slower time than theirs, we had to rock the crazy braided hair and pineapple socks in all of our races. So you can have a little bit of fun with it, eh? It's we're all geeking out on what we look like and how close our avatar is to what we look like. Your avatar, Katie, have you gone with make it look as close to what you look like in real life as possible, or have you gone with make it look the complete opposite?
Oh no, I have put quite a lot of time, care, and attention into making mine a clone of me, and I'm impressed. It's pretty close. I mean, I had to do a lot of tinkering, but I actually think it's pretty close. Let's just jump down here because the men are heading out of the pen. Quick observation: look at the size of that men's field. Even though we talk
Mm.
about the tactics on the course and we just kind of accept that maybe the women's and the men's will be really similar, it's not. And that's not because they're not equally as talented and capable athletes. It's simply the dynamic of numbers because it's quite a different race when you have 50 out on field versus 30 or 80, as it may be, with the men. Oh, it looks like there's 77 in the men and 29 in the women. So that in itself is quite a different dynamic. So they will just head out on course now. They've got 28 kilometres worth of racing as well. Worth noting that the last scratch race they did on the Petite Boucle was over 40 kilometres, around 48 kilometres. So this week will definitely be shorter, and I think that will play into the hands of some of the team kind of midway up that podium. We've got to talk about Relentless, but we'll do that
Yeah, I mean, do we
now.
talk about
Let's
that
talk about
now?
Relentless. Well, let's talk about it very quickly before we go back to the women. Once the women are finished, we can probably unpack it a little bit. And if social media jumps on board, it might get a little bit fun. But suffice to say, Anna, that you are the Facebook queen and you were on there and you had a little bit of an insight into this week, and that Relentless are turning up on the start line today without the lads that for weeks we've been promoting as the fanciest riders out there and super impressive. And of course, I'm talking about Krasicki, Duffy Jr., Kenton Nazaro. These riders are missing off the start line tonight, considering they're in a position to challenge Team ZWC for the overall. That's very surprising.
Yes. So, I mean, I don't know how deep we want to go into this. And again, I hope social media can enlighten us a little bit. But we have ZWC who is 4 points ahead of Relentless. What it looks like is Relentless. They put something up on the WTRL Facebook page, a little announcement. What it looks like to me is that they've determined that that 4 points is just not going to happen over the next two races. So their top riders have decided to exit stage left and not turn up in their jerseys tonight. Now, wouldn't be particularly the way I would approach a sort of what I would call a team sport here, because we're racing for a team. We're not racing for individuals. We do get the points individually, but that goes towards our team. So not really, I would say, the best look.
Well, look, I've got to say, I'm a little bit bummed to not have them on the start line tonight. I mean, we were every week we've been watching APAC and Relentless kind of go back and forth, and we expected that this week would be an absolute showdown. Now, let's see what happens, because sometimes, as we're seeing play out in the women tonight, it's quite a different race than we anticipated. So it's absolutely not over until it's over, and hopefully Relentless can still put in a good race and make it quite competitive. Now, we talked about the difference in numbers between the men and the women. In the men's A, there's 75. In the women's A, there's 28. But there is nearly 100 women overall across the grades. Consider, Anna, that this is just one of the community leagues. We're in APAC tonight. That's an awful lot of athletes that have joined in the WTRL, which is pretty cool. Now, we've got the women on left of screen. They are heading into a KOM here. There are power-ups being dropped left, right and centre. Kim Garland dropping that featherweight to attack up here. She's got Jen Reid on her wheels. She's a teammate. Danette Shaw, she's the one that we've been watching all night. Well, but this is going to be an interesting dynamic, Anna, because there's 2 Z Suns still and 2 Aero Flyers. So Danette Shaw, who we know has the power to win if they come to the finish in a small group, and Hans Josten, who so far has picked up the most intermediate sprint points. This isn't a particularly safe move, I wouldn't think, for Garland and Reid. In saying that, previous weeks we would have said it was safe, but this week it looks like the Z Sun ladies have turned up, with a little bit more rocket power.
I think they're looking really good, and I think they've drawn the power-ups out of the Aero riders, and if I've seen it right, I think the Z Sun riders have not dropped some power-ups yet, so at least one of them has something to play, and you can just see them lurking in the background like little, Marco sharks just waiting to attack as they've sort of got 2/3 of the way up this climb. Like I said, it flattens out here around that roundabout. Just where they get to that pink flag, it sort of kicks up again, and this is where if you're wanting to take those points, you just put an all-out effort. It's about, I want to hazard a guess, 30-45 seconds from here up to the top, and there we can see Hans Josten pushing off the front again on that green Tron bike, with Danette Shaw just sort of behind her, pushing up to that 6 watts per kg. So these guys mean business. They are pushing hard.
Well, Hans Josten and Shaw are kind of in a position here where they can afford to take a bit of a draft from Garland, because they're in the box seats so far. They've shown that they've got really good legs. They are 2 and 2. But look at this. As I say that, they're taking a bit of responsibility and moving to the front, led by Shaw. Hans Josten on a wheel. The gap has opened up. Is that because Hans Josten backed off a little bit? What we've seen time and time again just on today's course is that Shaw has better legs than even she realises. Every time she accelerates, she doesn't just gain a small... Exactly. It's not a small advantage. She's jumping right ahead. We discussed that you need to be efficient and only win by the smallest margin, but sometimes when you've just got really good legs, or you think that maybe you can attack over the top, that this is a good move. We've now seen a big break between Shaw, Hans Josten, their teammates there up the front there. Reid and Garland are now having to chase back on. This is great. This is not a dynamic we've seen in any other week. Ebert from Z Sun, she takes that 1 point in 5th position, crossing the line there, and she's also solo. This is really starting to get quite brutal. They've got about 5K left of racing, so their heart rates will be pushing through the roof. Look at that, Danette Shaw over 180. This is the time to take a bit of a breather, and she's doing that. She jumped into the power tuck for a second there, but she needs to make sure that she pushes right here and gets on the back of Garland and Reid. Isn't it interesting, Anna, how quickly it changes? Because just 20 seconds ago, the Z Sun riders were off the front with the 2 of them. Now it's the Aero Flyers that are pushing the pace. These 4 really have a very interesting couple of kilometres ahead of them.
They sure do, and they've got that sprint coming up really soon. So they do this big, long downhill, and you can just see in that elevation map in the top right, they're going to hit a little up, and then very, very quickly, they'll hit that sprint banner. And I will guarantee, and I'll give my most aggressive rider of the day award to Danette Shaw if she takes those sprints again. And you can see that course profile that's popped up on the bottom. They've just come down that big downhill after the QOM, and now they're going up this uphill, and we'll see that sort of sprint banner. I think they sort of round a little bit of a right-hander. It's a tricky sprint because it's not sort of a downhill. It's hard to see where it is. And just looking there, I don't know if someone's just dropped off the bat. Was that Danette? Okay. Just as I just cursed her, I think, giving her that aggressive rider award, as we see Reed absolutely dominating off the front. This aero team, they're not laying down here. They're wanting to show what they've got as well. And I think, I'm going to say it, she's a triathlete, and I think she's putting her skills to good use. She's just TTing off the front, and she's like, this is what I've got. Come follow me. And Garland's right there as well. And she's also done triathlon. So I think these guys know potentially if they can just drop the sort of 4.3 watt per kg, they can really take the sting out of those Z Sun legs for that upcoming sprint.
Well, we do know that triathletes are very good at keeping a consistent pace. They're generally very good at finding that threshold heart rate, holding it there, 172. I would say that is spot on for the kind of threshold heart rate I would expect. A triathlete is naturally much better at that. In saying that, I think that Danette Shaw has so much power in her. She's at over 11 watts per kg for a 15-second average. That's really big numbers. And so as long as Shaw is able to recover from some of the big efforts she's had so far, I think she's probably still the one to look coming into the finish. But I would expect, and we're seeing it here, is Hans Josten to do a little bit more of the work, take a bit more responsibility in chasing Reed down here. Garland doesn't have to do anything. She can just sit on the back and wait for the Z Sun riders to chase. But the Z Sun have really stepped up this week. So even though we know that Reed and Garland are more than capable and really strong, it has been interesting to watch the strategy change a little bit. And where are the Ace of Cakes is my question. Not only where are they in the race today, but where are all of the riders that we've seen in the series so far? Can somebody please jump on social media and help us understand that, because it's a bit confusing as to why they would be doing that.
Exactly. And Jay Reid, who we can just see on the left side of the stream, she took out those sprint points pretty easily with that early attack. And I'm just looking that the others are only 1 second back. So I think the strategy they've got is to pull those Z Sun riders to do some work and just tire out those legs. Because do you think maybe they're worried about Danette Shaw. They know that she can sprint well. Again, what kind of a strategy is going to happen at the end of this race is what I'm interested in. And this is what I love when you've only got 4 people, because it's so tactical, and I get really, really nervous racing when I'm in this situation, because it's just so unpredictable. And this is where you'll see those long range attacks. I'm looking at the 2 aero riders, both being triathletes. I think they need to go with that option. The Z Sun riders, we know they've got a better kick and a better sprint. It is an uphill drag, so sort of depend on what these riders are suited to as to who will do better on that uphill drag. But this is quite nerve-wracking coming into this last part of this race. They're at 26.7 kilometres. They don't have long to go.
No, and I think the sprint tactics will be an interesting one, but they do need to work together as a team. Danette Shaw, we've talked about the fact that she's on paper definitely the best sprinter. I never want to see a sprinter trying to sprint from the front. So I'm quite happy to see Shaw not on the front, because you lose your element of surprise when you do that. Yes, you're on screen, and so it's a little bit different when you're coming from the back. But by the time your avatar is huffing it past the other riders, if the others haven't started accelerating yet, it is too late. So they need to make sure that they use their strengths. If their strength is going long range, at a slightly lower power, they need to do that. If their strength is that acceleration, they need to make sure they can time that perfectly, because any gap that opens up when they're all at limit is going to be very, very hard to close down. So they're coming in. They're pretty close to the finish now.
Here
It
they
is
are.
peaking
Yep,
up. Power
this
ups
is
are
where it
being
looks like it's
dropped,
getting
Anna.
opened out. Yep, Garland hitting 8 watts per kg, but she dropped her power up very early. And like you said earlier, Katie, she's got the feather there. That's Hans Josten, and she's had a perfect power up that she's been saving. She's going to roll away with this, if I'm not mistaken, because that was a fantastic use of that right on where the climb kicked up. But the others are just there in the background. She's got to hold on. Danette, her teammate, is chasing her down with the drafting power up. She'll get a little boost behind her, and they have dropped the 2 aero riders, so Kim Garland and Jen Reid, who maybe just put in too much of an effort with that sort of solo work off the front. However, looking at Garland here, she is not giving up. She is pushing hard right to the line. She's just hoping it comes a lot sooner. She might run out of tarmac, and Danette is rolling over the top of her teammate Hans Josten, who looks like she just took out Kim Garland, and she was in third, and Jen Reid rolled across in fourth. So amazing result from both of the top teams, well, the second and third teams there, but one of them, Aero, will end up being the top team with no AHDR riders really having much of a showing tonight.
No, changing the top of the table, and really good tactics there by Zed's son, Danette Shaw. We did suspect she would do that. She perfectly used that drafting power up to bridge the gap over to Hans Josten. Kim Garland, she came back at the end, but it wasn't quite enough. Let's take a look at the men. At the beginning, we thought it was a race between Relentless and ZWC Attack, but Relentless have had a little bit of a change in direction. We've heard on social media that they are looking to grow the team, but there was a little bit of a difference in ideas about how they do that. So the 4 riders that jumped are actually going to start a new team. And while it may be unfortunate timing, because we really wanted to see those riders finish out this season, it's potentially quite exciting, Anna, to see what happens in the next season with those 4 riders. So let's take a look at the replay from the King of the Mountains here, and it's Morgan from DPAC who we are watching. But let's just take a look back at who took the points
the Kiwi.
out here. Oh, here's your boy Lindsay. Now, he was really good in the everything bagel in New York City. Exceptionally good, in fact. Oh, but it looks like he's just going to get rolled here. Oh, that's a tight one with Tanaka.
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
See if we can see that point standing. And it is sometimes, Anna, it's slightly deceptive because we don't quite have the camera angle that is directly across that line. So let's see when we can get some points ahead who did that. But Anna, you're getting all excited, a bit patriotic about Lindsay, your Kiwi rider. But this is his kind of course. I mean, when he was in New York, he really excelled. And this kind of has a similar DNA to it.
It sure does. I mean, I think the difference with the New York course was it starts with the KOM, so it just starts just sapping everything out of your legs, right off the bat. Whereas this one, you've got a few false flats, a bit of up and down, but the climb comes a little bit later. So I think Lindsay, I should be saying I'm not biased, but I think I am. I do want the Kiwi to win.
I think we all have our favourites. So
an update of I've just seen an update of the sprint points, and it does look as though Yuki Tanaka from ZWC did take out that KOM with Sam Lindsay just behind him from DPAC, and then Ryo Umichu from Evo in third, and Ed Morgan from DPAC in fourth. So DPAC coming second and fourth over that first KOM. So good job on them, because I think they're sitting third on the table, so a bit further back, but we do know Relentless is going to drop quite a bit further down from their second place that they're currently sitting on.
Well, we saw 77 riders start. We've now got 28 in that bunch, so it has whittled down. We're just going to flick across to watch the women's C finish, and we've got Amanda Reid from We Ate the Cake. She's got a teammate there in Mel Small, and these pair are riding it in. Law from the comments is 5 seconds back and chasing, but she won't be able to catch this pair, who are very matchy. They're absolutely on point with the avatar setup and the bike and everything. I love this. Good on them. Even the same sunnies. So good on these riders. put on a good show, and they've clipped along pretty well. Oh, they're
attacking each
sprinting to the
other.
line, but why not? It looks like
Exactly.
that they went over the line there in close proximity, and they did take out those top 2 points. Law crossing the line for third. TBR Smile on with Esdale. They might have a bit of a sprint on their hands here with Margarita, but they are again teammates, not on the same bikes, but they are in the same kit. They roll along in quite a civilized fashion, not sprinting each other to the line. But there's also been some really tight racing in this C division, and I'm looking forward to seeing one of the teams step up into the A for the next season, and I think they'll more than make up numbers. I think they'll be quite competitive. So Courtney from BRT crossing the line here.
I think that kind of may have made the decision around that C League is that TVR Smile on, it was only 1 point back, I think, just with their riders being third and fourth, not that 1-2. I think that might have cemented them into that bridesmaid second position, unfortunately. And we're looking back at the men's race here. We see Morgan from DPAC putting in a little dig on this false flats. This is a good place to just sort of test your legs and do a little bit of a push off the front and see who can come with me. This is a hard part of the race, and I've raced a few times on this course, and this is where teams have definitely tried to split things up. And you can see now there's just riders drifting off the back of that pack. It's forming that sort of little teardrop shape. We have seen a rider now jumping through and overtaking the DPAC rider. Now ZWC rider looks like Ikid, because it's the aero helmet, which we've become a bit used to, with another ZWC rider. So they're in different kits, though, which is interesting. So maybe 2 different ZWC teams and that DPAC team there as well. So DPAC with Lindsay coming up, they've got some team tactics going on today. I'm not sure why that rider on the front is on a disc wheel. It's definitely not the right pick for tonight's course. Maybe there's just a hangover from the team time trial last week, and no socks. Oh, I'm not sure about this setup here. You've got sort of a colourful wheel on the yellow S-Works Venge with bright blue and white shoes, no socks, navy blue kit, and then an aero helmet. What do you think, Katie? I'm not scoring this high.
Oh, I feel like we're on like an episode of Australia's Got Talent, and we're sitting in the judging seat and saying, I don't think we get 4 ticks for that one. I'm not. I think that, in my mind, I imagine this scenario where he's jumped on his bike. It's been a bit of a hectic day. He's jumped on his bike, gotten in the pen, and gone, oh, bugger. It's too late to change my avatar. And now here we are kind of mocking him for it. So, mate, next week we expect, although next week's team time trial, so his team time trial appropriate. Let's just take a quick look at these bonus points, because Ed Morgan from DPAC, he's been riding pretty solidly, but interesting, isn't it? Because Umechu from Evo Savages and Yuki Tanaka, all 3 of them are on 7, so they've had a go so far. Kanji Stinger, now he rode sensationally a couple of weeks back, and they did a very good set of team tactics with Mon Rich. Sam Lindsay also on 4 points. Chris Yip on 1 point. So Team ZWC attack, they are right up there. We haven't seen Relentless score any points there. While it is a bit sad, I think it really is sad, Anna, to see Relentless not finish this season as the unit they started. It is exciting next year that we'll have now a younger crop of Relentless riders who are given the opportunity to step up, and also those 4 lads perhaps join their next team. Bit of support for Team ZWC here, and you are spot on. The tactics are very impressive tonight. Hasn't it been good, Anna, as the weeks have gone on, to watch the strategies play out and a lot of the teams really evolve and start to work much more as a unit than as individual riders?
Yeah, it's I think these teams will start being on each other's Christmas lists. That's what I think. They'll start sending each other little presents, some cards. I think it's just built a whole lot of camaraderie. And you can see from some of the sort of team Facebook groups, I do sort of scan my eyes over them every now and then. And it's become so friendly. There's teams that are growing because people want to race in the series. And I'm just loving it, and the banter's great. You can hear them on Discord. You can see the chit chat going on. I think this has just been unbelievable for the Zwift community because it's not, so individually focused. You can go and get points, but at the end of the day, it comes down to your team, doing well, and that's something we haven't seen, at this level and at this scale. At least on my time in Zwift. And I think it's really cool. And you start to see little tactics coming out and you start to see, messages flying back and forth with ideas. I mean, I know in our team, we've got a rider on our team who is purely dedicated to making our racing playlists. And so, on the Sunday before the race, starts, she's sending out our playlist and we're all listening to it and adding songs and they have themes and, this being Yorkshire with
Hold on, and I'm
Northern
curious
England.
about this. Can you give us a little bit of an insight into what may feature on these? I mean, are we talking like a bit of AC/DC or are we talking Taylor Swift or maybe something in the middle?
Oh, look, it's very varying and wide ranging. I'm looking now at the playlist for this week, which is the Harrogate playlist, and it's all bands from Northern England. It's themed, so who knew that there was so many? I'm looking at Muse was actually from the north. Dom Dollar. We have put Spice Girls on there because I think Mel B and Mel C may have been
I'm
sort
very
of.
curious as to which Spice Girls songs actually.
Oh, that was Wannabe. So we've gone full old school retro
Excellent.
Spice Girls.
Well,
So,
look,
back to
maybe next week in the team time trial, Anna, we can get into a bit of karaoke while we're watching them just roll beautiful turns. So there's a challenge for you for next week. Can we just discuss this evolving small front group, because this is interesting. 13 seconds back to the chasers. That's really significant. So 14K a lap. They are on the second lap of this race, and no matter how many times you've reconned the course, it is quite different in a race because it does
Oh
really
no.
depend on who races or not. Now, Morgan, we've just seen spat out the back because he didn't do a super tuck.
Oh,
Oh boy, would he
what
be?
happened?
Uh, I don't know. Maybe a moment's hesitation, but we have just seen exactly the ramifications of not using the game in the
Yeah.
absolute way that you can. Now, I think Ed Morgan will get back on. He's got really good legs tonight. That's a solid effort. That's 2 seconds that he has to chase back. So hopefully Morgan can, I imagine he'll have a fairly increased heart rate and likely not because of the chasing effort, but more because of the mild cardiac arrest that he's having noticed that he's been spat out the back here. And it's interesting to have 5 riders in that select group because of those 5 riders, 4 of them are Team ZWC Attack. So that's an
Yeah.
interesting dynamic, isn't it?
Well, there was ZWC Attack and a couple of the DPAC riders. So that's going to prove to be very competitive at the end where all those big points are up for grabs. And you've got ZWC, who we know does extremely well in the team time trial, and they're all mostly here elite Japanese road cyclists in real life, so they also know how to sprint. You've got the Sam Lindsay, the DPAC rider. I think he might be the lone DPAC rider in that main group. So it's really everything is on his shoulders now to take out this race. Oh no, as we see there, E. Morgan has caught up. So that was a absolute monster effort for him to get back on that group. Are we seeing that he's back in there? It looked like he just kind of popped in and then popped out again. So he might be having dropouts or something going on with his little avatar. I
Yeah,
haven't
well, it
actually seen
looks
an
like
invisibility.
yeah, well, wouldn't that be a good thing? I encourage, I do believe, a little bit secret squirrel, Anna, but I do believe that there's some plans for some fun elements for the community league next year. So everybody should fill out their paperwork and sign up while they can, because that's going to be a very exciting season. It looked like Morgan was actually off the front there. I wonder if in his chasing effort, he went a little bit too hard in a mild panic. He can take a bit of a breather now, but the lesson is learnt. When the super tuck happens, you've got to get on it. Otherwise, big gaps can open up pretty quickly. So Morgan needs to stay pretty diligent there. But even with the super tuck,
he's definitely got some internet issues, as we see him pop in and out of screen about 3 times on that downhill. So that's part of the technicality of this sort of racing is you've got to have a very strong Wi-Fi. We might see his presence pop in and out again. He's like a little Jedi Master in that group.
Well, we talk often about all the different elements of Zwifting. IRL, everybody always faces mechanicals or falls or the elements, different weather conditions suit different riders. All of that's gone in Zwift, but it is replaced, I think, the biggest thing is by the old technical fault, and I think there's quite a lot of them. I know that I've been Zwifting and had my 3-year-old pull the power cord out of the back of my trainer, and that was when I had one of the trainers that didn't power itself, so that wasn't particularly fun. And I then spent the next 30 minutes of my own bunch ride chasing back on. Thankfully, I hadn't put the ride fence up, so nobody got kicked out of the ride. But yes, you need to be very considered in your setup, don't you? We're watching Drew Ginn here. He's an Olympic champion in rowing. He's an absolute powerhouse. He could go all day at one speed, and in fact, he's done an epic effort. He would be a very big asset to any team, but I think he might struggle a bit when it comes to really dynamic efforts. But he does have a reasonably high 15-second power, but I would hasten to say that he could probably hold that similar power for an awfully long time. So it's really interesting to see the different athletes out here. We talked about Garland before, who's represented Australia in handball. Now, normally you wouldn't have thought that was a sport we can cross over for. Let's just very quickly, they're sprinting for this KOM. We can see it top right of screen. Tanaka has opened it up. Sam Lindsay in hot pursuit, but I think Tanaka will take this quite comfortably ahead of Lindsay. As I say that, the fight back is on, but I think he will run out of time because they are nearly there. And Tanaka takes those points ahead of Lindsay. Hashimoto is in third. Morgan will come across in fourth. IKD in fifth. They need to make sure they regroup. This is a tough one. At this stage in the race, they've only got 5.5 kilometres left to race. Do you wait and make sure that you have a group to work together to the finish, or do you just chance it and see if you can do it? There is quite a big field chasing behind. There's 26 riders in that field. So I think these riders at the front, this is their chance. So Sam Lindsay in the power tuck there, he's certainly making every effort. Isn't it interesting? You look at the screen, the power's 0, the RPM 0, but the heart rate's 180. And I think that's exactly why he needs to jump into the power tuck to take a moment's recovery.
We obviously focus on different things, because when you were saying that, I was like, yes, he does look extremely matching there. Yellow Tron, yellow detailing on the kit. It's just like music there on the bike. I think it looks amazing. And I will actually just touch on, we've had some comments come through to one of our channels around why people are riding the Tron as opposed to the, say, S-Works Venge with the Zip 454s, which I personally thought was faster. Is that if you're a lighter rider, it's better to pick the Tron because it's a slightly lighter bike, whereas if you're a heavier rider, it's better to pick a bit of a heavier bike, which they've said does sound very counterintuitive, but works. There's been a lot of sort of physics chat, but it makes sense around bike weight versus rider weight. So some people have made some decisions on YouTube about what kits they're going to be riding tomorrow, and it looks like Tron is winning out.
Well, we've got some pretty smart cookies amongst both the fans watching and also the athletes riding. A lot of these athletes have full-time normal jobs. I mean, I don't know what a normal job is. Goodness knows we don't have normal jobs, Anna, but a normal job, and a lot of them work full-time in different fields from, accounting and finance through a lot of our athletes are in STEM, and I think that's where kind of a meeting of the minds as well as pure physiology comes into play, because a lot of these athletes will be calculating every single gain that they can make. Sam Lindsay, he's got a lot of gains tonight. He's really pushing ahead on this one. He's got a 7-second gap on Hashimoto. Overall, so far, he's earned 8 points, only bettered by Tanaka on 12 points. But Lindsay is certainly showing himself to be the hot favourite coming into the finish here. Again, 28 kilometres worth of racing, and he has what he's opening into a sizable gap there with 8 seconds. Morgan is showing up 7 seconds behind. We think he's been having a few connectivity problems. He's been ducking in and out, so hopefully that evens out for him a bit. But there is a small group, so Tanaka, Hashimoto and Morgan are 8 seconds behind, and they are all chasing together. But Lindsay's in a really good rhythm. 181 heart rate, what we're looking for at this stage of the race, definitely what we'd call a business end of the race, is that the riders are absolutely at threshold, because if they are holding anything back at all, it will really come back to bite them in the butt at the end. So Sam Lindsay clocking along really well, consistently over 400 watts, very high heart rate, very high cadence, around the 95 mark. Drops into that super tuck on a couple of occasions. I think it allows him to get a little bit of recovery, but he does need to be quite careful and conscious, Anna, that he doesn't that doesn't cost him a hesitation, because all dropouts aside, we did see what happened with Morgan when he didn't jump into that super tuck.
Exactly. And I've just seen coming through that Sam Lindsay is an ex-elite rider. So, and Alex has said, boy can push the pedals. So he's doing pretty well. But unfortunately, this group behind is pushing very high watts. Not quite as high as Lindsay. He's obviously going for these he's getting actually pretty close to the finish line here. 7 seconds back. I mean, I'm kind of biting my fingernails here, literally. I think he might have this, Katie. I think 8 seconds now. He's pulling back a little bit now. He's just pulled back to 3.9. No, there we go. Back up to 7. He's got a heart rate of 182, which is well beyond my max. And oh man, he's coming into the last throes of this race, and everything's on the line here. He's pushing like 382 watts. These guys have really, really got to catch on to him if there's any hope. And you can see there, Hashimoto's got him in his sights, but he's not pushing anywhere near the watts that Sam is doing to be able to catch up to him.
No, Sam Lindsay's looking really good. Anna, I think you'll be rubbish when your kids are competing in sport if you're getting so nervous watching this. They'll be out winning. You'll be the mum that's got her back turned like, I can't watch. But it is nerve-wracking. I will say that definitely. Sam Lindsay, that gap is shrinking, but ever so slightly. This is the pivotal point in the race, because this is the really tough climb before the finish. You're right, the drop of that feather, the power up. Oh. This is where power ups can really come into strategy. If we look at the top right hand of screen, we can see that finishing gantry, and I think Sam Lindsay has got this. He's got a 9-second gap ahead of those chasers, Tanaka, Hashimoto, Morgan. They're in hot pursuit, but this is just too big a gap to close down.
I want to break into our
win for New Zealand today, Anna. Yeah, you're a bit excited. There's a
God
lot
of nations at thy feet. That's the start of our national anthem.
A lot of potential karaoke going on here, Anna. I think that you're setting yourself up for something.
Hand on heart. This is the first time I've commentated on a Kiwi winning one of these races. This is unreal. Oh, the tears feel like they're coming, Katie. This is emotional. I just absolutely love it. Pride for the Kiwis.
I'd like to see a victory haka on social media later, please. That was a bit of a hot sprint to the finish. We'll get a replay when we can to see who crossed in second, third and fourth there. But they ended up coming in quite thick and fast in the end, that chasing bunch. So Sam Lindsay taking a very comfortable win, and a very proud Anna Russel commentating and watching on this one. So good on Sam Lindsay. Hashimoto, he's got a good, comfortable lead going to the finish, but there Tanaka with a very late acceleration. We're looking back to 6th place here, and Avola from DPAC. It's hard to see. Oh, look, these replays are hard because we don't exactly have that side-on photo finish angle. But look at Hashimoto sneak across there with a last-minute acceleration. That was pretty good by him. Raises the question of, did he leave his run a little bit too late if he had that much in the tank? Stinger came in after it was Morgan and then Hashimoto, Tanaka and Stinger. We'll have to see what plays out in terms of Morgan, because that was a few dropouts, and honestly, that's one of the most stressful things that can ever happen in the racing. So we've seen both of the women's grades finish. Some interesting things to talk about there with the Aero Flyers, Ace of Cakes, but Zed's son, Anna, I think they kind of stole the show today, even if it doesn't say it on the overall table. I think certainly for race 9 here in the WTRL, they are the story of the week. And Danette Shaw for most aggressive rider, you picked it.
I think so. I did. And, that's what I like to see. I mean, we talked a little bit about, we may cut back to a little bit more racing. Sorry. It looks like we've got the B men coming in as well. So they're just finishing their second lap here with a big group. This is completely different to what happened with the A's just before with the solo breakaway. So this is a group of, looks like about 12 riders getting led out here by the TBR team in the yellow with some Evo riders, the 50 Tooth team, and Aero as well. So a big bunch of different riders coming through, just sort of, they'll go down sort of a little downhill here and then go into that upward drag right through to the finish line. Nice view there of a Vision team person, Nelson. So they're pushing off the front very well with the group just a little bit behind and dropping a few Aero Force riders off the back as he's pushing this pace.
Well, we've seen these leagues be super competitive. Often in the BC and D, they're even a slight bit more competitive because it's possibly less about teams being a little bit cagey and more about individuals sort of etching their mark on the league. In saying that, the teams do work really well together. Across the whole community league, we've seen some really impressive team strategies play out. We've just commentated strung out individual sprints. This is a very different dynamic. It is a bit of a fast sprint. They're already going 50k an hour. The rider who's able to kind of get the element of surprise, I think, is in for a good one here. We've got North Endurance Paul from Cryogen. He has made that move and that acceleration. He hasn't dropped a power up yet. Has he got one to use, Anna, or is the one that he's got just not going to help too much? He has opened up a gap. It's 2 seconds. There's still a bit of a run in, but we can see that finish gantry. If he can just put his head down and bum up, he can probably pull this off in a really impressive. Wasn't that just timing? The timing of that move. It was, and I absolutely applaud the Cryogen squad. I think they share a lot of knowledge across all of their teams, and we've seen some really classy riding across all of the grades from them. So he crosses the line with a win, but gee, they came pretty close at the end there. Thomas pushing right to the line and finishing not too far behind. I love it. It always shows that it's a pretty hard course, Anna, when we see their avatars cross the line and just stop dead, because what that indicates is they've double clipped and they're kind of collapsed on their handlebars in their home Zwift studio.
Yeah. There's a lot of stories about the way people finish. Sometimes it's in tears. Sometimes I had someone come over and get on my trainer for a race, and they ended up having to run outside and have a little cheeky spew in the bushes. So I think, everyone finishes a race differently, but it always
Did you just
hurts.
say a cheeky spew in the bushes? We're keeping it classy here.
It's always classy. As we're watching
that one.
Yeah, exactly. Watching a few more of the C category riders come in. That's Root Sword, just finishing off the C category here. So they've just come through that second sprint banner on their second lap. Looks like Peachy has done what we saw in a bit of the women's race with Reed going off the front and Lindsay in the men's race. So don't know if he was watching the coverage and have decided this is a good tactic, but Peachy is pushing very well off the front in the C-Cat and has got a 4-second gap back to the pack behind.
It's a good tactic. I mean, I think it does pay to watch the other categories and to watch the stream and to see how they're doing it and figure that into your own strategy. And, something my coach used to tell me, Anna, was that if you're hurting, but you've done the work before getting on a bike, you can be damn sure that everyone else is hurting too. That's when you attack. You attack when you are close to your limit. You do not attack when you're feeling pretty good, because there's nobody in these leagues that is really dominant as an individual. Everybody is pretty fit. Everybody is pretty strong. A lot of it comes down to strategy, to timing, and maybe on a particular day, what kind of course suits the riders. And I think what we're noticing is that a lot of these riders that are making these quite successful attacks, their heart rate is quite high, their power is quite high. They're not attacking when everybody's fresh and is able to respond, but they're really getting the bunch when they're vulnerable. And that leads to quite a big gap opening up quite quickly because they are literally unable to respond. They've still got 1.5 kilometres left to race. They do go up a pinch here. It's quite deceptive on screen. It doesn't look like a climb, but for reference, we can always look at the top right of screen and see what percentage that is clipping up. Anything over about 5% we call steep. Anything over 10%, frankly, we call offensive. But that is quite steep and does suit the power riders.
Exactly, and I've got to say, Peachy probably is going to take this away 9 seconds ahead as they're just doing this little sort of downhill. They'll take that right-hand turn, it'll go up, and then it flattens off a little bit before the finish line. But I think Peachy really has played this extremely well, just came off the momentum of that sprint, got the points across that, and then just kept that momentum going, And when you look at the watts he's putting out, it's not, amazingly higher than those behind. So they're sort of staying, in touch, but it was just that initial acceleration has been able to push him well ahead of that group behind, which is now 11 seconds, 12 seconds back. So well played to Peachy. That was extremely good tactics. And I don't actually see many of his teammates behind him. It looks like a lot of AHDR chances this group back. So that was good. He was a solo sort of team rider in that group, took his opportunity, and the big teams have been caught out.
It's so often you win the race in, win or lose, within about 5 seconds when you time your move perfectly. Because now that he's off the front, they're all making a pretty similar effort to maintain their position in the race. Gaffel, he has said, I am not letting this happen. And he has jumped across with a massive acceleration, team type 1. And he has zoomed up on Peachy. We thought that this was kind of done and dusted. But Gaffel is there. Ruch's board is only 4 seconds back. This is playing out slightly differently. Well, but they're right near the gantry now. So Gaffel will get overtaken just at the end. You got to feel for Peachy, but he did ride exceptionally well. I stand by it, Anna. He timed it beautifully, but Gaffel, he certainly gets the prize today, not only the overall honour, but certainly the prize for the timing, because that was absolutely textbook way of measuring your effort
beautiful.
And getting there just at the end. So good on him there. But we've got to also give big kudos to the riders, to Peachy, for making that effort, for throwing that attack out there and keeping it interesting.
Yeah, that was not how I saw that playing out. I sort of glanced to the right of my screen, and then suddenly there was someone catching up. So maybe that solo attack doesn't always work. We've seen it work a couple of times tonight, but that was definitely one that didn't work. I mean, he still got second, but wasn't where he wanted to be at the end. Let's have a look
we'll
if we
take
can see back on a replay of how that happened, because
that move.
So quick.
Well, he was a very big acceleration from Gaffel. And looking at his overall power, he's certainly the kind of rider who is really well suited to the old jump across. So you have a couple of different styles of riders who can go across the brakes. A lot of them, for example, if it was Drew Ginn, he would just be on the front powering away at a very consistent power sort of metre by metre clawing it back. Gaffel, massive acceleration that he manages to hold for quite a significant amount of time. He then keeps quite a high power. As soon as he got Peachy within sniffing distance, we kind of knew it was over, and he did not wait around. He didn't freewheel or take a moment's recovery. He blew right past him. Peachy had made a huge effort to that moment. I don't think he was able to respond. He was probably feeling a little bit despondent watching the race slip away from him there. But awesome effort, Peachy. Amazing ride by Gaffel. And it was all, we often say, Anna, that it can be won or lost in a few seconds. And I think Gaffel certainly won it with that acceleration. That was the race-winning move for him.
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, that's a great way to sort of round out tonight and see that that tactic gone wrong slightly, you got to say it. But I love that the confidence and the sort of wherewithal to just go for it and, see what you got. And, sometimes it's good to get that Aggressive Rider of the Day award. We talked a little bit before about Danette Shaw and how great Zed Sun was today. And I think I just want to touch on how, they're sitting in third place. They're not really in striking distance of first or second, but they come out today, unlike sort of some of the teams we've seen on the men's side. We talked a bit about Relentless. They've come out today and they've just gone, you know what, we're going to go for every single point and we're going to go for the win. And all kudos to them. I love that. I love sort of seeing that kind of attitude in racing.
Well, we see it a lot. Probably the biggest reference would be the Tour de France, where we hear before the race even starts, before a single metre has been pedalled, that a team is there for X reason. They might be there for GC, they might be there for the green jersey, they might be there for stage wins. They're not all there for the same reason. And I think that really adds to the complexity of the racing, is that it's not predictable. You can't just take for granted the fact that some of these riders who aren't up overall on the GC won't still animate the race and potentially really screw up your race plan if you're not able to stay with them. We haven't been able to find out just yet what has happened with the Ace of Cakes ladies. We'd love to know that. Is it a similar case to Relentless, all this drama? It's like Days of Our Lives in the Zwift Community League. But it is interesting, Anna, isn't it? And I think they've been gaining confidence and really looking to gel as teams. If they're not gelling as teams, they're really looking to forge a new direction, because they all have their place, their rightful place in the Community League.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where we're seeing things mix up, and that's what you want to see in a good league. You want to see riders getting poached by other teams. You want to see teams sort of, falling apart at the seams and going in different directions, like you said. So, I mean, I love it though. I like the way, Aero's probably going to take out this league now. I interviewed them last week for World of Zwift, and they've got some great stories. One of their riders is, going through chemotherapy and racing in this league. So you can't get much more inspiring than that. So, it's great, these stories that are bubbling up from the community. There's the drama, but there's also the inspiration.
I think so. And I think we have to remember that also in Prem League, but particularly in Community League, these are real folks. They all have some really interesting stories. They're not full-time athletes. They're all balancing family and work and socialising. And we all know 2020 has been rubbish with COVID. So there's been a lot of stress and anxiety. And I really genuinely feel, Anna, like this racing has probably brought together people in a way that they've absolutely really needed. Let's try and take a look at the overall results, because I am curious to see what has happened this week. We had some pretty tight tables at the beginning. Let's just take a look at the APAC Div 1. Danette Shaw, what a show from her, and Iris Hans-Josten in second. Those Zed Sun riders certainly made it very interesting. Kim Garland and Jen Reid in third and fourth for the Aero Flyers. Kate Ebert, another Zed Sun, in fifth. Lam Kong, BRT, she was in sixth. Kiralee Carberry, another Zed Sun rider, up there. Kim Willix in eighth. Willemijn de Roo in ninth, and Meredith Clark in 10th.
And looking at Division C, we had Alfie Reid taking that out with Mel Smolinars just a little bit behind her, actually. Must have been a good sprint. Tamsin Law in third, Lucy Estelle in fourth, Margarita Williams in fifth, Courtney Wheeler in sixth, Jessica Hamilton in seventh, Kimberly Kern-Stokes in eighth, Natalie Victor in ninth, and Mandy in 10th.
So let's take a look at how that leaves the overall standings. Oh, we've got a race on our hands here. The Ace of Cakes on 171, Aeroflyers on 171. Now, if Ace of Cakes don't turn up next week with their A squad, I think we know what way that will go, and I think we'll see that 1 and 2 flip around. Z-Sun, they are 8 points adrift. I don't think they'll make it to the top there, but excellent effort from them, especially this week. They're sitting in third. BRT Devil Kitten sitting in fourth on 158 points. So those 4 teams certainly standing up in this league and racing exceptionally well. The Fluffy Buns in fifth, the Bombshells in sixth, the BRT Hellfire Kittens in seventh, and the Cryogen Valletta in eighth on 82 points.
And looking at the C division, we have AHDRL, We Hate the Cake, 172 with TBR Smile on. Same points. So that, I think TBR was a little bit ahead before this race. We saw the AHDRL ladies take out that 1-2. So that was amazing there. Tied at the top. BRT Fiery Kittens, 168. So very close to that top 3. AHDRL Caffeines, 151. AHDRL Comets in 5th place. The Spin Mafia in 6th. The Cruzettes in 7th. Evo Flux 1 in 8th. With 1 point back, CMA, Queen Bee, and then number 10, the Herd of Echidnas.
All right, isn't it interesting? Both of those A and C are tied at the top of the table. Let's take a look at the men's Div 1. Sam Lindsay, a win for the Kiwis there. We're still going to claim Pavlova, but you can have the win tonight, Anna. Sam Lindsay there. Hashimoto coming in second. Ed Morgan in third there. I'm glad he got his connection issues sorted out. And he won't forget to do the Super Tuck next time. Tanaka in fourth. They all finished pretty close together. Fabienne Davola in fifth. And they were fit. They actually came pretty close to catching that front 4. Kanji Stinger in number 6. Cole Sheehan, he is in 7th. Braden Claus Proctor in 8th. David Pacheco in 9th. And Greg Morgan finishing in 10th. Really interesting, the number of different countries that are represented here in the time zones. So while we are APAC, that's a friendly time zone for APAC, it doesn't exclude riders who may be keen to get up at all hours. I'll hand over to you for the Div B, Anna.
The Div B was won by Paul Martin from Great Britain, with Matt Hargraves in second, Stanley Thomas in third, Richard Spear in fourth. I actually know that guy. Fifth was Tonham Nabe. Sixth was Charlie Wonderboy Randall. Seventh, Andre Fuegner. Eighth, Trent Burlace. Ninth, Matt Nelson. And 10th, Sam Crofts.
I feel like they've purposefully thrown a few curly names out for us this week. Let's take a look at the Div C. Gary Gaffel took the win there ahead. God, that was super to the line there. Jim Peachy, he certainly got most aggressive rider for his efforts. Gustav Ruttersvord in third. Will Swan in fourth. Ali Wright in fifth. Julian Beyer in sixth. Andy Kite in seventh. Andrew Bain took out eighth. Brett Mack in ninth. And Alex Campbell took out the top 10.
And looks like the Division 1A ZWC 175 well ahead now of Relentless, who are virtually a no-show tonight, with third DPAC 165 points, Evo Savages in fourth, Aero Masters in fifth, 1 point behind. This is going to be a good battle to watch next week. World Elite Zwift is number 2 and 6th. Team ZWC Blast in 7th, WTRL Pioneers in 8th, Smoother Z-Sun in 9th, and TBR 54T in 10th.
All right, let's look at the Div B. The Big Ring 52, they are leading on 173 points, but only 2 points ahead of Aeroforce, so that will absolutely come down to the line in next week's TTT. So you're on notice, guys. Bring your A-team. The Evo Barbarians are in third, 15 points adrift on 156. Cryogen Etna in fourth. The Dirty Sprockets and Vision APAC both on 126 points in 5th and 6th. The Blowflies only a couple of points adrift on 124 in 7th. Z Sun on 106 points. MRRB, they are in 9th. Tune Bike Works, they are rounding out the top 10.
And the APAC Division C men, AHDR Chances in first, looks pretty dominating there. TBR 46T in second with 168, 10 points back is TT1 Carboss in third. AHDR Choppers in fourth, MRRC in fifth, Cryogen Altide in sixth, Cryogen Alto de Luchas in seventh, AHDR Chargers in eighth, TBR 47T in ninth, and Cryogen Mount Hotham rounding out in 10th.
All right, well, we've got a couple of close races at the top there. And while we've expressed our slight disappointment that the Relentless team aren't finishing as the group they are, I want to say absolute good luck to the remaining younger Relentless riders who are now rebuilding that team. And also good luck to those 4. And boys, you've got to choose a good team name because, so much effort goes into that. So much commentary gets spent talking about the team name, Anna.
Sure does. Yeah, so we'll see what they come out with in the next league. But yeah, I think we've got a good battle in the women's racing in particular. I think ZWC is definitely moving ahead in the men's, but the women with Z Sun really mixing it up. I love what they're doing there, trying to just go all out in these last races. We've got AHDR, who we'll see what happens next week. They might be sort of developing some riders, but Aero, that Aussie team with the Aussie stars on their little kit, looks like they might be taking out this division for the women.
Well, I might have to break into the national anthem next week. I think that's the challenge, Anna, is one of us is on for karaoke. So let's see. I'm kind of, just quietly urging Sam Lindsay to go because I want you to be the one to do it. But equally, we do have some awesome Aussies performing. So thanks to everybody tonight for joining us, to our crew following along on the Zwift Community Live on YouTube and also on social media. Please share any stories you have. We love the inside goss. It's kind of like Mother's Group sometimes here, Anna, and we love any info anybody sends us. But thank you for joining us. This was week 9 of the APAC Zwift Racing League WTRL. We'll be back next week, same time, to round it off with a team's time trial and round 10.